Welcome to the Sons of Resistance channel. The reactions to the invasion of Ukraine, which Putin started on February 24 due to his personal ambitions, are growing like an avalanche. Partial mobilization decree by Vladimir Putin caused massive protests in 38 cities, mainly in Russia's major cities. Before the impact of these protests waned, Russia announced that it had annexed 4 regions in Ukraine. With this move of Putin, the reactions against Putin and Russia went beyond the Russian border. Why world war started to react to this decision? Why Russia's annexation was met with a great reaction in the West? The G7 group consisting of Ukraine, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and United Kingdom and the United States issued a joint statement saying that they would never recognize the annexation. Messages of condemnation and new sanctions came one after another from the European Union, Greece, Israel, Poland and many other countries. President of Ukraine Zelensky stated that Ukraine will apply for NATO membership by applying accelerated procedures. Zelensky underlined that as long as Putin continues to be head of the Russian Federation, there will never be peace talks between the two countries. In addition to these, Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine will take back its lands from Russia and ask for support from the international community. Leaders of various countries stated that, as a result of Putin's decision, they would not recognize the territories annexed by fake referendums as Russian territory. While the eyes of the whole world were on the updates in the war between Ukraine and Russia, Russia's annexation decision had great repercussions. The Consulate General of Russia in New York State of the United States got its share of reactions. People all over the world were outraged at what Russia did in Ukraine. A protest was held at the Russian Consulate General in New York. Unidentified people painted the wall of the consulate with red spray paint. The spokesperson of the police stated that the investigation into the incident is continuing and that one has been arrested in connection with the incident. The destruction of the wall of the Russian consulate came shortly before news emerged that Putin had annexed 4 territories in Ukraine and that Russian forces had killed 30 civilians. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was not accepted by anyone. The fact that the residents living near the Russian Consulate General evaluate the destruction as a work of art is the biggest proof of how much respect people have for the Russians. Some residents stressed that New York understands that Putin is a very bad person. A hooded and masked person was spraying red spray paint on the consulate building in the first light of the morning in the security camera footage found in the vicinity. At the time of the incident, there were no security guards around the Russian Consulate General building. Different comments were made about the event on social media, and the public revealed their attitude towards the event. Social media users appeared to be mocking the recent referendums, which the West denounced as fake. A legal journalist, on the other hand, looked at the events from a legal point of view and warned against such behavior. The journalist emphasized that such behavior should not be done and that they should respect the Vienna Convention. He underlined that diplomats in Russia need laws to protect themselves. Despite all the reactions, Russia has declared that it has annexed 4 regions that make up 15% of Ukraine. The course of the war was not very bright for Russia, and that's why Putin hastened the annexation of these territories before making key administrative decisions on borders and governance. Russian authorities did not set clear policies or conditions for proper administration. For the Kremlin government, co-management in the forcibly annexed areas will be very difficult to coordinate, because the Ukrainian local officials who previously ruled the region were either killed or arrested by the Russian forces. In addition, with Putin's partial mobilization decision, the Kremlin government exhibited a great example of administrative incompetence in the recruitment processes. Now Russian bureaucrats will try to establish governance structures on a resilient and reluctant local population in the war zone in Russian-occupied Ukrainian territory. We do not think that they will be very successful in this regard. As the stories of the Russian military's failures increase, dangerous proposals come from pro-Putin people. The Ukrainian army liberated Liman, which has strategic importance in the Donetsk region, from the Russian occupation. The reason for the withdrawal of the Russian troops was that they faced the threat of encirclement. In response to this situation, Ramzan Kadyrov, Putin's biggest supporter of the Ukraine's invasion plan, made a cruel suggestion. Ramzan Kadyrov stated that nuclear weapons should be deployed. In his post on a communication platform with users all over the world, Ramzan Kadyrov emphasized his personal views on the need to declare martial law in the annexed regions and use low-efficiency nuclear weapons. Russia's efforts to intimidate the local population with such measures in order to maintain control of the annexed areas could bring the Kremlin government to an end. In the Grand Kremlin Palace, Putin announced that he had annexed 4 regions that stated the regions would be protected with all the power Russia has. At the root of this statement is that Putin fears losing these regions. In addition, Putin is considering ending the war he started as a result of his personal ambitions with a tangible regional gain. Because there is a possibility that Putin's political life will come to an end as a result of further embarrassment on the battlefield. It is known that Putin has previously set up sabotage teams with bribes and different promises on the territory of Ukraine. Russia wants to damage civilians and civilian infrastructure in areas under Ukrainian control. Russian troops could inflict damage on Ukrainian forces with attacks coordinated with Russian sympathizers. With the mobilization decision, Putin wants to deploy the soldiers he recruited as part of the mobilization to the Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. The Russian people, on the other hand, showed their reaction to the partial mobilization decision in the squares. In addition, the Russian public showed mathematically the extent of the reactions in the survey they participated in. Half of the Russian population says they are angry and worried about the mobilization decision ordered by Putin. 47% of respondents expressed concern after President Vladimir Putin's announcement of the conscription. A poll said that about half of Russians questioned felt fear or anxiety after hearing that the Kremlin had prepared hundreds of thousands of troops to fight in Ukraine. In the survey published by the Levada Center, an independent survey company, 47% of Russian citizens surveyed stressed that they were anxious and fearful following President Vladimir Putin's statement. 13% said they were outraged, while 23% said they were proud of Russia and Vladimir Putin, who approved the decree. According to the survey data, 1,631 Russian citizens aged 18 and above participated in the survey. The survey was carried out in 50 urban and rural settlements throughout Russia, in the private properties of the participants, through individual interviews. Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and the biggest supporter of Putin's decisions, stated that only 300,000 reservists with previous military experience will be called in. Despite this statement, major public dilemmas arose over the conscription of large numbers of ineligible or apparently ineligible individuals, even between officials and pro-Kremlin commentators. It was seen that even the journalists who supported the Kremlin avoided supporting Putin and his team after these practices. After Putin's statements about partial mobilization, thousands of men of conscripting age with arms fled Russia. The region where most of the escape from Russia was concentrated was Russia's border with Georgia. More than 2,400 Russian citizens were arrested in anti-war protests, unsanctioned by the Kremlin in 38 different towns and cities in Russia. Among the protesters, those eligible for military service were immediately drafted into the army with a summons. The Kremlin sees this as completely legal. Putin acknowledged that after the mobilization decision, many problems occurred with the borders of Russia. Vladimir Putin underlined that he is aware of the problems regarding citizens who are not eligible for military service who are conscripted under the mobilization. However, despite being aware of this situation, Putin did not make a decision about the retirement of his conscripts. In fact, Russian military officials began to forcibly recruit Russian citizens who did not want to fight, opening more military registration offices throughout Russia so that under the mobilization would not flee. I wonder how the Russian army can gain efficiency on the battlefield from people who have no military experience and are unwilling as part of the mobilization. After the Russian military failed in Ukraine, especially the decision to mobilize would be reason enough to be the end of Putin. Thanks for watching.